The box was closed when he left that morning. He remembered that with certainty, the kind of certainty that only comes when your brain tags something as irrelevant, until it isn't. It was a simple wooden box, dark walnut, one of those mass-produced vintage things she bought in bulk during her redecorating phase. It sat on the hallway table like a neutral observer, holding spare keys and nothing else. And it was always closed. Always. That was the unspoken rule. No reason, no ritual, just habit. Like brushing your teeth in a certain order or stepping over the third stair because it creaks. You don't question it. Until one day, it's open. He came home late. Not suspiciously so, just late enough to miss the sun, but not the ambient warmth it left behind. The house was exactly as he'd expected. The door clicked shut, and the hallway was wrapped in that curated stillness she'd spent weeks designing. Everything in its place, perfectly arranged like the pages of a catalog. The smell of cinnamon diffusers she insisted on in every room. The hush of a playlist she always set before leaving for errands. Even the faint hum of the thermostat adjusting to evening comfort. But there was the box, open. Not wide open, just ajar. Barely a sliver of darkness inside. Not enough to catch the eye, but just enough to catch his. He paused, stood still long enough for the silence to start pressing in around his ears. His hand still rested on the doorknob behind him, but his gaze was locked forward. On that box, the lid angled just slightly to the left, like a mouth mid-confession. He didn't move closer, didn't touch it, didn't need to. What mattered wasn't what was in the box. He already knew it was just keys. It was always just keys. What mattered was that it had been opened, that someone had made a decision, that something had shifted. Maybe she'd rushed out and left it. Maybe she'd needed a spare and forgotten to close it. Maybe it was nothing, but it wasn't nothing. Because he knew. Not in the dramatic way movies paint it, with orchestras and shattered glass and slow zooms. No, this was quieter, smarter, colder. It was the way a single wrong note spoils a symphony. Not loud, just wrong. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. The doubt doesn't shout, it whispers. He walked past it, carefully, like stepping around a sleeping animal you're not sure you trust anymore. The lights in the kitchen were off, but the wine glass was there, still damp on the inside. Not a drop of lipstick on the rim, which struck him as odd. She always wore that same pale shade, even at home. Said it made her feel presentable, even for the walls. But tonight, the glass was clean, just wet. And next to it, the second glass, bone dry, placed exactly opposite, like a guest had come, carefully, and left quietly, like he was never supposed to notice. He didn't ask, didn't call her, didn't text to ask what time she'd be home. That wasn't his role anymore, not really. That part of him had died quietly a few months ago, when they'd stood in that empty living room of the new house, the echo of their voices bouncing off blank walls while she said something about a fresh start. And he nodded like he believed it. He didn't, but he nodded. Because you don't punish a drowning person for grabbing onto you. You just wait until they stop thrashing and then decide if you want to let go. She'd poured everything into this place. Picked out every curtain, rug, light fixture with obsessive precision. Like if she could just control the environment, she could bury the memory of what she'd done. She even started saying things like, our forever home, as if the betrayal hadn't already made the foundation crack beneath them. But he let her believe it. He agreed with every decision. Hung her framed photos. Installed the dimmers. Said yes to the second guest room. Even though they both knew no guests would ever stay. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's patient. It smiles. It nods. It builds. And now, here he was, standing in the home she called safe. Watching as it seems slowly came undone. Not with fury, but with precision. He reached the living room and sat on the couch. The throw blanket she insisted on was folded just so. He unfolded it, covered his legs, and stared at the muted TV. Not watching, just thinking, just remembering that box. Open. When she came home, 20 minutes later, humming something tuneless and spinning her keys around her finger, he greeted her with a kiss on the cheek and a smile that reached exactly halfway to his eyes. She didn't notice. She never did. Not anymore. And behind her, in the hallway, the box sat closed. The first time he noticed her skipping over his name in conversation, it seemed like nothing. Just an offhand slip, one of those things people do when they're multitasking. She was on a video call with a friend, standing barefoot at the kitchen island, twirling the cord of her hoodie between her fingers, laughing about some client disaster. He heard her say, "Oh, yeah, we stayed in that little cabin upstate, me and the gang." The gang. He was the gang now. She glanced at him, briefly, like she'd felt the error mid-sentence, but her smile didn't flicker. Her voice didn't falter. She just kept talking, and he just kept standing in the doorway, holding the grocery bag that suddenly felt heavier than it should have. It was things like that, little edits, tiny omissions. The way her sentences began with "I" and ended with "on my own," even when she was technically talking about them. She still kissed him goodbye, still asked if he wanted coffee, but her questions felt rehearsed, like a cashier reading from a prompt. One day, she came home with a new keychain, one he didn't recognize. It clinked like an afterthought when she dropped it in the bowl by the door. "Got it from a vendor," she said when he asked. She didn't meet his eyes. She was already halfway up the stairs. The phone was different now, too. It used to lie face up on the counter, unlocked, accessible. Now it was always face down, silent. She changed the lock screen. No more photo of the two of them at the beach. Just a gradient. Blue fading into black, like an ocean at midnight. She said it was less cluttered and smiled. But the kind of smile you wear in a job interview. Practiced. Polished. Not meant for him. She was always cheerful lately. And that scared him more than any argument ever could. Too cheerful. The kind of upbeat that starts to rot the air after a while. She'd laugh at commercials. She'd hum while folding laundry, even when she folded it all wrong, his sleeves crumpled instead of rolled. She'd use phrases like, "I just need a little space for clarity," and "I've been exploring emotional autonomy," as if she was giving a TED talk instead of brushing him off at dinner. And the more she said the word growth, the more he felt like soil, just something for her to plant her new life in and grow out of. One night, he came home and the lights were dimmed, just playing low in the background. She'd cooked chicken piccata, his favorite. The table was set with real napkins, wine glasses, the whole show. She leaned over the stove, said, "Surprise," like it was an apology wrapped in lemon sauce. They ate. They talked about nothing. He said the chicken was perfect. She smiled too quickly, like she'd been waiting for the compliment, not the conversation. After dinner, she took her phone upstairs. Said she had a few things to finish up. He watched her go. Her footsteps were light, not careful. And that, too, felt rehearsed. Later that week, he noticed the mail pile shifting. She used to leave it for him, bank statements, ads, whatever. Now it was pre-sorted. His was stacked neatly. Hers was missing. Not hidden. Just elsewhere. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. The false climax came on a Thursday. He was supposed to be at a late client meeting, but the call got canceled last minute. He didn't text her that he was coming home early. No reason. Just instinct. The house was quiet when he walked in. Too quiet. No music. No laughter. No clinking dishes or rustling papers. Just silence so complete it felt deliberate. He took off his shoes, padded softly through the hallway. Her voice drifted down the stairs. Muffled, but unmistakably hers. He couldn't make out the words, just the tone. Soft. Intent. Not businesslike. Not platonic. A low laugh floated down next. A kind of laugh he hadn't heard from her in weeks. He walked slowly up the stairs. Avoided the creaky fourth step. Her office door was mostly shut, but not latched. He paused just outside. Listened. No, he doesn't know. He never really asks, you know. Another laugh. Lighter this time. Then quiet. A silence that bristled with things unsaid. He considered knocking, or bursting in, or walking away. Instead, he did none of those things. He stood there, hand resting on the doorframe, heart hammering against his ribs like a slow warning. A few seconds later, the tone shifted. Her voice returned to neutral. A click. A final laugh. Okay, I'll call you later. When he finally entered, she looked up, startled just enough to betray something. Not guilt. Just surprise. Hey, she said too brightly. You're home early. Everything okay? He nodded. Meeting got canceled. Oh, she said, adjusting a paper that didn't need adjusting. Well, I was just finishing up some work stuff. She smiled, but her hand hovered over her phone just a second too long before flipping it face down. Again. That night, they watched a movie together on the couch. She curled up against him like nothing had changed. And he let her. But he didn't feel her warmth. Didn't hear the dialogue. Didn't care how it ended. He just watched the screen. Like he watched her now. Detached. Observing. Waiting for the next line in a script he hadn't written. He didn't believe her anymore. But he smiled anyway. And she smiled back. both of them still playing their parts. It was the mug that did it. Not a text, not a whisper, not some late-night slip or lipstick on a collar, just a mug, warm and half-drunk, sitting on the bathroom sink. It wasn't his. Not because he didn't recognize it, he did. It was theirs, one from a set she insisted on buying last year when she decided their kitchen wasn't elevated enough. She called them her slow morning mugs, the ones with the matte finish and the tiny gold letters etched inside the rim. Breathe. She only used them on Sundays, barefoot in thick socks, hair up, reading in that corner chair she never let him sit in. That was the ritual. Her ritual. And yet here it was Tuesday morning, 6:47 a.m., lukewarm, steam still rising, with a faint smear of lip balm along the rim. He stood staring at it, toothbrush hanging from his mouth, the bristles growing soft and heavy with foam. He hadn't made coffee yet. Hadn't even been downstairs. He always made it. Always. She hated making it, claimed she couldn't get the measurements right. So who made this? His reflection in the mirror didn't flinch, but he could feel his body recalibrate, something in the blood cooling. The second faucet was wet too. They never used both. She always used the one on the left. His toothbrush, however, hadn't been moved. His towel was still crisp and folded on the rack. So someone had been in here, using her sink, her mug, and her toothbrush wasn't the one dripping. Hers was. He turned the tap on, rinsed his mouth, and watched the water spiral away like it was carrying something he couldn't retrieve. Downstairs, the kitchen looked untouched. But the trash told the truth, a second coffee pod wrapper, buried under the foil top from the almond milk she kept for guests. The dishwasher was locked but hadn't run. He opened it anyway. 2 spoons. 1 knife. A single fork. Mismatched. As if someone had eaten, cleaned just enough to pretend they hadn't, and then left before the evidence could cool. He walked to the dining table. Her book was open, face down, something she never did. He used to tease her for being obsessive about creased spines. She said it was about respect. A book is a conversation. You don't shout at it, and you don't break its back. But here it was, splayed like a lie in plain sight, the middle warped. He didn't touch it. Didn't need to. He just stood there, absorbing the precision of the error. A habit broken. A ritual undone. The kind of mistake you only make when you're too comfortable, too careless, or too used to not getting caught. She hadn't even left for work yet. She was upstairs, in the shower now, humming. That same fake happy tune she defaulted to when she was about to lie. The sound of it grated. It was the tune she hummed the night she said she wanted independence within intimacy, as though that was a phrase normal people used. He sat down, opened his laptop, and accessed the smart home app she didn't know he still had credentials for. The door logs were routine until last night. Midnight entry. Garage door. Code entered. Guest profile. The one they set for her sister during the holidays. That account had no notifications, no alerts. Just access. Just silence. The cameras were disabled for that profile, too. She'd insisted on that in case someone wants privacy. He had agreed. Back then. Back when he was still naive enough to believe in boundaries without motives. He opened the calendar. Her shared schedule used to be blank. Lately, she'd started filling it in again. Work meetings. Pilates. Personal time. Tomorrow, 5:30 p.m., blocked out with a location pin that didn't make sense. New roots therapy. She wasn't in therapy. Not anymore. Said she didn't like her therapist. Said she wanted space to process things on her own. But here it was, logged like a breadcrumb. He copied the address, pasted it into maps. A private house. Residential. He clicked Street View. A blue car in the driveway. He recognized it. From a photo she once showed him, back when she still shared things. That's Aaron's car, she'd said, laughing. He's this quirky project manager, always trying to find metaphors in everything. The car had a bumper sticker, some obscure indie band she pretended to love. Her kind of person. Poetic. Harmless. Until now. The mug. The faucet. The spoon. The car. The humming. It wasn't doubt anymore. It was math. Clean, cruel math. And the sum was betrayal. He closed the laptop. Sat in the chair she never used. Leaned back. The shift was internal, but it rang like a bell, clear, final. He wasn't lost anymore. He wasn't guessing. The war had begun, and she didn't even know it. Upstairs, the shower turned off. Her humming stopped. He waited. Not with anger. With intent. Because this wasn't a marriage anymore. This was a game board. And he was done playing blind. The dinner was her idea. She called it a reset, said she missed him, Said they'd been adrift lately and maybe a quiet meal at their favorite old place would remind them who they were. He agreed, calmly, because letting her set the stage only made it easier to burn it down. She wore the navy dress he bought her 3 anniversaries ago, the one she said made her feel like a woman in control. Her makeup was perfect, smile curated, every movement practiced like a politician's wife standing beside the podium. She reached for the wine list with a breezy laugh. "You remember when we used to come here all the time?" she said, her eyes softening just enough to look convincing. "Feels like another life, doesn't it?" He nodded, folded his napkin in his lap, and looked her squarely in the face. "Was Aaron here the last time you came?" The color drained instantly, just a flicker, before she covered it with a tight smile and a tilted head. "I don't know what you're talking about." She said it gently, playfully, like he was joking. He didn't blink. "Blue car. Guest code at midnight. Mug in the bathroom. The toothbrush she moved. You think you're careful, but you're not." Her smile twitched. "You're being paranoid again." "I've told you," he cut her off, voice low, steady. "Don't insult me. Not tonight." Her jaw clenched. "So what? You're stalking me now? Watching my every move?" "No," he said, eyes narrowing. "I stopped watching when I realized you weren't even pretending anymore. I just started documenting." She leaned back, arms folding. "God, you've always needed control. Maybe if you spent half as much energy connecting with me instead of trying to trap me." "I did connect," he said sharply. "Every day. I tried. You're the one who shut the door and called it growth. You didn't want connection. You wanted an escape route you could decorate with self-help language." Her voice dropped. "That's not fair. You know I've been going through things. Trying to rediscover who I am. You made me feel like what?" He interrupted, heat finally creeping into his words. "Like someone who expected loyalty? Like someone who kept showing up even after you stopped looking at me? Like someone who made your coffee every morning while you were planning your next lie?" Her face flushed, but she held her ground. "People change. Relationships evolve. You can't just freeze me in place and expect me to play the same role forever." "No," he said, leaning forward, "but I can expect basic decency. And if you wanted to rewrite the script, you should have had the guts to let me walk out before you handed the lines to someone else." She scoffed. "You think I wanted this? That I planned it? Aaron listens. He doesn't analyze every word I say. He doesn't make me feel small every time I ask for something different." He laughed, bitter and dry. "No, he just makes you feel special while you dismantle the life we built and call it liberation. He tells you what you want to hear, because he doesn't know you. He's a mirror you admire, not a partner you've earned." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "You think I wanted to hurt you?" He stared at her. "No, I think you didn't care whether you did or not. And that's worse." She sat in silence for a beat, eyes darting around the restaurant like she could disappear into the wallpaper. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said quietly. "I just needed something different. Something that made me feel alive again." "And you couldn't feel alive with me?" he asked. "You couldn't talk to me? You couldn't say, 'I'm scared I'm disappearing inside this version of myself. Help me out?' Instead, you chose secrecy. You chose performance." She tried to hold the silence, but her hands betrayed her, fidgeting with the napkin, her bracelet, her wine glass. "I was afraid," she finally said. "Afraid that if I told you the truth, you'd stop loving me." "You made that decision for both of us the second you lied," he said. "And you weren't afraid of losing my love. You were afraid of losing the convenience of it." Her mouth parted like she was going to protest, but no words came. He watched her, fully now, not the mask she'd worn for weeks, not the curated woman who smiled without soul. This was the unraveling. Her breath grew shallow. The tears welled, not dramatic ones, but the kind that creep in when someone realizes they've lost control of the room. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know how to fix it." "You don't," he said. "That's the point. This isn't yours to fix anymore." She looked up, eyes pleading. "So what happens now?" He didn't move, didn't flinch, just met her gaze with a stillness that cut deeper than shouting ever could. "Now," he said, "you get to sit with what you've done. And I get to decide who I become without you." She broke then, not into sobs, but into silence. Real silence. The kind that comes when there's nothing left to manipulate. He didn't reach for her hand, didn't stand. He just sat there, calm, watching. The same way she'd watched him unravel for months while telling herself it was kindness. Now she got to see what the end really looked like. Not slammed doors, not screaming, just the quiet, surgical removal of belief. The last, clean cut. She didn't cry right away. That came later, after the silence wrapped around her like cold water. First came the disbelief, that stunned, glassy-eyed look of a woman who just watched her script torn up mid-performance. She reached for control the only way she knew how, by pretending he was the unstable one. "You're overreacting," she said, voice too high, too rehearsed, like she thought if she kept the tone familiar, it might make the moment rewind. "This doesn't have to be some dramatic thing, okay? We can talk. We always used to talk." He didn't answer, just stared at her like he was seeing someone he didn't know sit in his wife's seat. Her face twitched. She tried again, this time with edge. "You act like I'm the only one who's ever messed up. Like you're some saint. You're not, you know? You're cold. You disappear into yourself. You made it so easy to drift. You were never really present." He nodded slightly, like he was considering the words, then replied, low and clean, "And you were never brave enough to say that when it could have mattered. You didn't want presence. You wanted permission." She blinked, like his voice had struck her harder than anything else could have. "You think you're above this?" she snapped, the anger rising now, clawing for anything to hold. "You think you're so perfect? You're a machine. You observe, you calculate, you withhold. I had to build my own emotional oxygen just to breathe near you." He tilted his head, voice soft as smoke. "If you were suffocating, you should have left. Instead, you chose to decorate the cage and pretend it was liberation." That silenced her for a beat. Her lip quivered. Her eyes scanned the room, catching the edges of people trying not to look, pretending not to hear. But the air had changed. The story she told herself, the story she thought she could control, was unraveling publicly. She moved to pity next, the performance cracking at the seams. "You know I loved you," she whispered, leaning forward, voice trembling like a child rehearsing grief. "You know I did. Everything we had, our home, our plans, I didn't fake that. I didn't plan to hurt you. I was just lost. I needed something. I didn't know how to ask for it." He watched her for a long moment, then answered, "You didn't ask. You hid. You took what you wanted and left me filling in the silence like it was my fault. You could have come to me broken. Instead, you came to me dishonest." Her hand gripped the edge of the table now. "Please," she said, her voice thinning, "don't throw this away like it meant nothing. You don't just erase years like that. You can't." He nodded again, this time slower. "No, you don't erase years. You bury them. With every lie, every omission. Every morning I made you coffee while you were giving someone else your truth." Her breath hitched. "You'll never find someone who loves you like I did," she said, and this time it was almost a hiss, more threat than lament. He didn't flinch. "I hope not," he replied, "because I don't want love that erases me to feel found." She opened her mouth, but nothing came. She was unraveling now, the illusion stripped to the bone. Her hand hovered midair like she was reaching for something to hold, but there was nothing left, no script, no defense, not even the fake smile she'd worn like armor. Just a woman exposed, with nowhere to hide but behind old lines that no longer worked. Her voice cracked. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, barely audible. "That I regret it? That I take it back? That I'm sorry?" His eyes didn't soften. His hands stayed still. "I don't need you to say anything," he said. "You're not the audience anymore." Around them, plates clinked. A waiter cleared a table. Somewhere, someone was laughing at another table, oblivious, or pretending to be. But here, in this silence she couldn't break, she sat alone. And he just watched her, not with hatred, not with grief, just with clarity. That was the final blow. Not his words, not his anger, but the stillness, the absence of need. The power she used to hold so easily, now gone, slipping through her fingers while he sat there, unmoved. She had spent months pushing him out of the story. And now, for the first time, she realized she was no longer in his. It started with a message short, desperate, sent at 2:14 a.m. when she assumed his guard might be down. "I still love you." No punctuation. Just those 4 words, shaky with the weight of everything she no longer had the right to say. He didn't answer. The next day, another, "We were soulmates. You know that." A voice note followed, her breathing uneven, words trembling as she tried to find a tone that once worked on him. "Please, just talk to me. Please. I don't even care what you say, just don't ignore me like I'm no one. I'm still me." But she wasn't. Not anymore. The version of her that had held all the power, the curated woman with the confident laugh, the polished presence, the sharp tongue, was gone. What remained was a woman stripped of narrative, left with nothing but fragments of the life she broke with her own hands. Her job didn't last long after the rumors spread. Office affairs always have a shelf life, and Aaron, the man she'd staked everything on, didn't even bother denying it. He just transferred out, left a vacancy and a whisper trail, and she was the one left behind with the HR warnings and the cold glances in meetings. It didn't take long before they phased her out. Performance misalignment, they called it. Her friends, those polished, cocktail-laughing friends who cheered her on when she flirted with danger, went silent. Some blocked her. Others ghosted. A few sent half-hearted, "hope you're okay" texts and never followed up. Her sister stopped responding after their father said he didn't want drama at Thanksgiving. Even her therapist, the one she raved about, canceled twice and then recommended she try a fresh support system. Her name became the kind people brought up only in cautionary tales. She moved into a smaller place. Sold the watch he'd gifted her for their 5th anniversary to cover the deposit. Got a new number. Then changed it back, hoping maybe he'd call the old one. But he never did. Not even once. She ran into him once at a coffee shop, 2 towns over. He was standing near the window, laughing with someone. She froze when she saw him, heart pounding, face flush with memories. She waited until he was alone, walked over slowly, rehearsing something about closure or maybe an apology. "Hey," she said, soft and almost childlike. He turned, looked at her, and in that moment, she saw it, not hatred, not pain, not even disappointment. Just recognition. The way you recognize someone from high school at a gas station, distant, meaningless, polite at best. "Oh," he said. "Hi." That was it. No venom. No opening. No warmth. Just acknowledgement. And then he turned back to his drink, as if she had been a brief gust of wind, noticed, then forgotten. That broke her more than screaming ever could. That he didn't care. That she wasn't the villain in his story anymore. She wasn't anything at all. In the weeks after, the messages grew more erratic. "You don't even know what I've lost. I would have done anything to fix it, but you never gave me the chance. You told me once I was your home. How can you just move on?" But he had. Quietly. Decisively. Not out of revenge. Not even from anger. But from clarity. When someone rewrites the story without you, you don't keep reading. You start your own. She watched his new life through shadows, photos from mutuals, snippets online. He never blocked her. That would imply she still had the power to intrude. He left the door open, knowing full well she no longer had the key. She was the one standing in the cold now, pressing her hands against a window that no longer looked into anything she belonged to. And when she finally called him again, her voice hoarse, layered with the weariness of 100 self-inflicted losses, he answered. "Once. Just once." "What do you want?" he asked, not cruel, not curious. Just flat. She choked. I don't even know. Just, can we talk?" He waited, then said, "I don't know who you are anymore." Silence stretched. "But I used to," he added. "And that's the only reason I picked up." She tried to speak, but the words failed. There was no script left. No plan. Just the quiet knowing that the man she'd once tried to control, manipulate, blame, and then beg was no longer hers. Not even in memory. And when he hung up, it wasn't an ending. It was a confirmation. Her story was over. His wasn't. And now, he would live it without her, without apology. Thanks for listening. Let me know where you're watching from, and what you would have done if it were your wife.